to get started. Again, good morning. I'm Eleanora Ferrante. I am the owner of Square Peg, Square Hole Coaching. I'm a college admissions and career coach. I work one-on-one with high school students as well as college-age students and adults, helping them figure out their pathway, whether it's to get into college, to figure out their major, or to get started on their path to their new and better career. I'm going to bring Vicki Vollweiler up so she can introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Vicki Vollweiler. I'm the founder of College Financial Prep. I work with families of high school students, college students, even those going to graduate school to help them with financial aid and planning on lowering costs, maximizing savings on the cost of college. So I help with financial aid, finding scholarships and grants, appeals, student loans, and everything that goes into the cost of college and helping to make a solid plan. Thanks, Eleanor.
Hey, thanks, Vicki. So what Vicki and I are going to be talking about this morning are the things that have been changing lately, and there's a lot. Every time you turn on the TV, if you're getting emails from different colleges, you hear a lot about what's happening in the whole college landscape. Everything from the SATs and the ACTs canceling to the different schools trying to figure out how they're going to operate, with distance learning. There's a lot going on. And I've been sitting on a number of webinars over the last couple of weeks, reading a lot of articles, and truth be told, a lot of admissions people don't know what they're going to do either. They're still trying to figure it out. So what we're bringing you today is the best knowledge that we have as of today, April 18th at 10:36. That could change today at 11:36, to be perfectly honest. But we do our best to keep updating you with the most current information. So I'd like to start off with doing just a quick poll so we can see who we have in the room in terms of the grades of your children. So I'd just like to know, if you could please just indicate, do you have 9th, 10th, 11th, or a 12th grader, a middle schooler? If you have multiple children, click them all, just so we get a feel for who is in the room. And I'm going to give that a moment. We have almost everybody in. I'm just waiting on a couple last people to have their, to indicate how old their kids are. Oh, and it looks like we have quite a range. Okay, so I am seeing, we have somebody with a middle schooler. We have a number of juniors, which is to be expected on a day like today. And then we have several in 9th and 10th grade as well, and some seniors. So great. So we have quite the range that I was expecting to see, which is wonderful. And we're going to talk about things that affect all of your kids at this point. So I'm going to get started talking about the thing that's been in the news this week, which is the cancellation of the SATs. It's been interesting. In March around here, most of the schools canceled the administration of the SAT because they were just trying to figure it out, and everybody was worried about having their kids in the same space. Then they canceled May. Now they've canceled June. ACT has canceled the April date. They have not, as of this morning, canceled June, but pretty sure that's going to happen. It would be a big surprise to me if the ACT continued to move forward with that, given what's been going on. They are both trying to find ways to enable your kids to take these exams. So if you have a junior, this is probably front of mind for you, right? Whether your kid has had a chance to take one or none at this point, a lot of people are worried about what will this mean. So College Board has come out and said, we're going to add additional testing. ACT has said the same. ACT is really, they're very hopeful people. I'm actually pretty impressed with the folks who live there. They're optimistic. They want to add a second date in June. So they're thinking to go the other direction. I don't really think that's going to happen. SAT is looking to add a September date. They already have August, October, and November. And what both groups are looking to do is give priority to two groups of people. One, those kids who already have registered for June, and two, anybody who is a current high school junior who has not yet taken an official exam. So they want to give priority to the kids who haven't even had a chance to show up yet and try and take these tests. They are also looking to increase their test-centric capacity. So if a school typically would host, enough testing site for, say, 200 kids, they're asking those schools to pony up and provide more testing space than that. They're also floating this idea of an at-home SAT. which, as you can imagine, has all sorts of potential issues around that. You know, the schools are very wary, the colleges, of something along those lines for two reasons. One is equity. Right? The schools have done a lot of work over the last few years trying to be more equitable towards our lower income students, our first gen students, you know, and think about it. If you're in a Brooklyn apartment right now with your brother, your sister, your parents, your grandparents potentially, your Wi-Fi is spotty. Well, how are you going to be able to take an at-home SAT in the same way that my child could? My child could be sitting here in my basement. Welcome to my basement office, folks. Right? They could be sitting here. It's nice and quiet. I have good Wi-Fi, and they could just take the whole thing without any distractions. So equity is one piece. The other piece should come as no surprise after the whole Varsity Blues scandal last year is how do we make sure people aren't cheating, right? Right now, I could have somebody standing in front of me and helping me with this, and you would never know. So there are a lot of questions that remain to be answered. Both the SAT and the ACT have potential to come online as at home, but not really sure if that's going to be happening or not. Still to be determined. Some of you may also have students who have been thinking about taking the SAT subject test or may have taken them in the past. And for those of you who aren't aware of what those are more specific exams, similar in some way to a Regents or an AP. So you could take a subject exam in biology, chemistry, math, foreign language, history. The schools, the colleges then use that information, again, as one more data point to see you know, where you stand relative to the rest of your class. There are very, very few schools who use that. Right? Typically, it's been the Ivies, the MITs of the world. But you know, I was looking at all the schools yesterday. There is no school any longer that requires it. There are a few that still recommend it. Most have gone either to optional. You know, so if you've taken the test and you've done well and you want to send it, great. But I've seen some schools now that are saying they will not even consider it if you send it. So I will give an example of Cornell, where it used to be that if you were applying to Cornell Engineering, you were required to take 2 SAT subject tests. Now they are saying they will not even consider them. So they're really trying to even the playing field for everybody. So if your kid hasn't taken the SAT subject test, if you've never heard of it before, don't worry, don't even ask them to do it. If you've got a kid who's thinking about it, it's very, very low priority. I'm not recommending it to anybody any longer. Right. So what does this mean for everybody? Well, if you're a freshman, you're in good shape. You don't even have to think about it. Parents of sophomores, hang on. Your kids, by the time they need to take the test, this will all be sorted out. Everybody will have figured it. They could start practicing and preparing over the summer, but we are not stressing these kids at all about worrying about it. Juniors, right? So if you've got a student who is a junior has already taken the SAT or ACT, that's great. You know, you could use that as a gauging point. Some kids will take the test multiple times. I had one student take it 5 times. You could also take it once and be done. My own daughter did that. She came out with the score that she needed to get into the school she wanted. She was like, I am done, which was fine. So we are not stressing these kids about the exam as well. If it turns out that they are up and running and they have the opportunity to take the exams, then they should. Right? Colleges are still going to want to see that, but if you haven't taken it, don't panic. If your kids don't get to take it, don't panic. Admissions is part of the whole world. They understand what's going on, and they are not going to put pressure on these students to try and figure out how to take these tests when they're not there. Right? So they really are. So one thing I've seen over and over, I've been listening with schools such as Rice, Indiana, Purdue, GW, American, you know, it's just a wide range of schools. And to a T, every one of them goes, we are people. You know, like we've been through this process. We are doing our best for our students. We want to help them. So, and there will be plenty of opportunity, I think, come fall that if we really need to do them, we will do these tests. Many schools, though, are going test optional, right? So what's interesting is that the test optional schools are growing in number, which is really nice to see. And for those of you who don't know what test optional means, basically your child has the has a choice of, do I or do I not send the scores that I have to these schools? Some schools, like St. John's around here, used to say, as long as you get at least a 1050 on the SAT, 25 ACT, send them in. So that's one option. It might be if you hit a certain threshold, send them. Other schools would say that you could do different things for us. NYU is a great example of this. You could send in the AP scores, your SAT subject test, your ACT, your SAT, whatever you wanted to send them, and they would review that as their mechanism for seeing how you would do on these standardized exams. And others just say entirely, we don't care. Bucknell was piloting that last year, as a matter of fact. Like, we're not even going to look. If you send them to us, we're not even going to look. Afterwards, they wanted to see them maybe just so they could use that as some data points and understand how their class looked overall, but they weren't even considering them. Right? So last year, there were about 1,000 students, about 1,000 colleges that were test optional, including some really big names like University of Chicago, right? Big name. Their students typically have ACT, SAT scores at the top tier. Already this year, there's more than 1,100 schools that are test optional. Big names again, BU, Indiana, Northeastern, Tufts, Vassar, right? Big names for going test optional. And a lot of schools are saying we're going to test it just for a year. So, if your child can take the test, they should. And then they will have a choice of deciding whether or not to send it, right? So I see, one person, Charlene has a question. If your child already took the SAT but isn't satisfied, do they have to submit the score? For a lot of the colleges that you're going to apply to, the answer is no. Right? It will be a matter of which schools and at the end of the day, what they decide to do. But I think you're going to see more and more schools go test optional, or say you could try other things like an AP exam to send those scores in. They're going to feel pressure to kind of conform with everybody else and not add additional pressure to these kids. So I think that this is a really nice trend, and that going forward, more and more schools are going to start to walk away from this idea of standardized tests being so important, and they're going to start to rely more heavily on things like grades, which study after study has shown to be a much more reliable predictor of how your child will do in college than a snapshot for a standardized test. All right, so let's move on to some of the other topics that are really big this year. All of your kids are stuck in the house. They have no activities, they have no sports, they're not leading anything. What do you do? And besides the fact that they may be driving you a little crazy because they're in your house and really want to be out on the field playing, or they want to be with their activities at school and helping others, a lot of them are wondering what to do. Well, the answer at this point is there are two things. One, continue to focus on your academics, right? So it's going to be important for them to try and stay on pace with that. It's really easy for them to just back away and not do anything. I heard a number this morning that in New York City, there's a 25% truant rate. And I love that. So the kids are just not stepping in now that you're truant by just not participating, doing the work. That's a huge number. I don't think that's going to happen in places where we are, because most of us are really trying hard to keep our kids involved. But it's important if you don't have activities, to make sure they're focused on their academics. And the other side is to find some creative ways to spend their time, right? So they can help somebody, right? Whether it's online, virtually, or if they are, being able to go out and help a neighbor, not saying interact face-to-face, I know the rules, right? But somebody needs their lawn rake because there's all the stuff that's out there. If they need to bring the garbage down, maybe they can find out if people need groceries brought and just left on their doorstep. There are plenty of ways to still help and feel active. It's a great time to pursue a passion, right? Something maybe that you've never done before, but you're interested in trying now for the first time. This is a great time to do that. If you always wanted to do photography, do photography. If you always wanted to do a ton of reading, then do that. It's going to be a chance for these kids to take a little bit of a step back and say, what do I love to do? And test the waters. But keep in mind, these kids are experiencing something they've never experienced before. The anxiety that goes with that is tremendous. So we don't want to push them to do something that they are not comfortable with, and that they are not ready to do, but let them kind of take the lead, but encourage them. Try something new, do something fun, do something you really enjoy. Next thing I'm hearing a lot about is that the high schools are going pass fail. So what does that mean for my GPA, and what will the colleges think? The colleges are going to think that everybody in your high school went to pass fail, and they are working with all of their feeder schools to make sure they understand that, and to be able to provide a good feel for taking those grades in and utilizing them appropriately. What it does mean is that if you are a high school junior right now, chances are reasonable that your first quarter grades in senior year are going to have a bigger impact than your third and fourth quarter grades junior year. We may start to see that deadlines for applications get delayed in order to enable your early action or your early decision applications to have time to be able to see what your first quarter grades are like. I've already seen University of Florida, which is one of those hard and fast November 1st deadlines. If you're not in by November 1st, you're not in. There's no chance. They've already pushed their date out to December 1st. So I think a lot of the schools are going to start pushing their dates out, or be a little bit more flexible in asking for first quarter grades if you're trying to apply early. First semester grades, if you're applying regular decision, will definitely start to play more of a role in the overall looking at a child's application than the end of junior year. And again, if you have a freshman or a sophomore, not to worry, right? This is going to be a blip on their transcript. The colleges are going to know better, right? So what will the colleges be looking at? Well, essays and grades are going to become really important as opposed to the standardized tests. Activities will still be important, but the essay is suddenly going to rise up. And we've always put a lot of emphasis on writing a really good essay that describes your child. Who are they? What do they love to do? Why are they interested in pursuing whatever their major might be? And it was really upsetting in previous years because there were some schools that were notorious for saying, we only read the essay if we have to. We just base everything on numbers. A lot of your much bigger public institutions were doing that, right? Penn State being one of them. Last year, they're like, yeah, we're not even going to read these. Really? We just put all that time and effort into it. Why not? And now this year, they're all saying, we're going to read them. We want to know something about your kid. I heard from Rice the other day that they said, if it's not a prompt on a common application, which is one of the universal applications that most schools use, they're going to add it themselves as an extra essay. How did you spend your time during this period, right? During the pandemic, what did you do? And not from a sense of we want to see that you've done something, but they want to understand how it impacted you. So if you are up in upstate New York and you don't have the ability to use Wi-Fi, because a lot of places in rural areas don't have Wi-Fi, they want to know that and how it impacted you. If your family was sick, if there was financial implications, or maybe you did something great during this time. We want to know that, right? So that may start to be something that more schools will add on. I think they want to still give kids an opportunity to talk about themselves in a traditional sense, but the schools are going to take a look at that, right? So I think the schools are still going to look at, did you take a rigorous academics, right? The toughest things that you could take for yourself. Not saying every kid should be taking APs and honor level classes. It needs to fit the child's academics and their ability. But did you take the most rigorous that you could, and how well did you do? So what colleges are going to look for is going to be slightly different from in the past. But I like where it's going, to be perfectly honest, because I think it gives the kids a better chance to showcase themselves and not be so reliant upon just the basic standardized tests, which was where a lot of this was going before. Okay, so moving on, juniors and seniors. A big thing is you can't get on campus. I had a friend recently try to go visit a campus, only to find out that the campus was now being used as a place, as a hospital, makeshift hospital. So you couldn't even get anywhere near the campus. They were like, what? I said, well, if you'd asked me, I would have probably been able to tell you that and saved yourself the trip from trying. So what do you do, right? We have a lot of seniors trying to make up their mind. Is this the place for my child? Yes. Is this for me? Should I be going here? I haven't had a chance to visit. So the first and most important thing is if those schools offer admitted students day, they should be doing that on virtually, right? That's a great way to get to hear what the school wants you to know about them, to see the campus. They will show you all the important places. You will get to hear from students who are currently on campus, and you can, as a parent, can sit in with them and listen to all that. You have the opportunity to talk to existing students potentially through that, or at a later date. So if your child is trying to decide between schools and they haven't talked to somebody who's in the same major that they plan to pursue, I would reach out to that school and say, hey, do you have somebody who's an art major, an engineering major, a math major, whatever it might be? I'd really love to talk to them. Reach out to admissions themselves. They are there and answering questions, right? So they're welcoming emails. Phone calls are a little bit more difficult sometimes, but right, they're definitely welcoming emails. They will set up time to talk to your kids, right? And I'm going to send afterwards some links. In addition to what the colleges offer for virtual tours, there are plenty of other companies that are offering these virtual tours as well. So we'll send those links out to you so your kid can look in different ways at the same school and get a more complete view of the whole. Seniors, right? So the big question is, what's going to happen come fall? RIT sent a note out yesterday to their admitted class saying, our plan is to be in person in the fall, maybe a little delayed, but that's still our plan. Will that happen? I don't know, right? But that's their plan. They do have a contingency plan that says we may not be able to do this. Or if we do it, we may have to spread out kids. We may have to do more hybrid kind of classes, more online. So they're trying to be reassuring. BU has come out and said, we may be online, we may be in person. A lot of schools are trying to put their plans in place, but honestly, until the governors and President Trump have figured out how they're opening up the states, there's nobody who knows for sure what's going to happen. Right? So the three things that I'm hearing are: one, fall might be completely online. Secondly, that there might be a delayed start of the in-person class. So potentially, if the school typically opens in August or September, they would now open in October or November. Or some kind of combination. You know, a lot of schools do these summer sessions, which are 3 to 4 week intensive classes. So I'm hearing some schools say they're interested in doing that. Maybe they do a couple of short sessions where it's online, and then they bring the kids on campus as soon as they can. You know, in all likelihood, if these schools do come on in person, there's going to be a lot more online classes anyway, sort of what RIT is saying. It might be hybrid classes, or you might have to take half your classes online even still. Right? So that leads to the question of, what should my kid do? Right? So I have some students that have said yes to a college that they haven't visited yet. Right? But they're the kind of kid who could. They have the personality. You could put them down anywhere and they will make friends. They will figure it out. And the academics there are really what they wanted. I had other students who said, I never visited that campus. I come from upstate New York. How am I going to, you know, how will I fit in if I go to a school in the South? Well, the answer is, I don't know. So I may not want to do that. Kids are starting to think about, should I be closer to home, right? Which is really an important piece to this. You know, I just recently counseled 2 kids, one who was considering a school down in Georgia and Binghamton, and for him, being close to home and going to Binghamton, and another one who was deciding between Bing and Fordham. So for her, she opted for Fordham, right? So everybody's sense of closer to home is different, but you need to understand that a lot of the incoming freshmen are changing their minds. Depending on the survey that I've seen recently, anywhere from 15 to 30% of the kids are making a different decision than they would have back in January. That's a big number. Right? So what are they doing? Well, some, like I said, are opting to stay closer to home. Others are considering just a different school because they can't afford to go to their top school, and Vicki's going to talk more about the financial piece. Others are sometimes saying, well, I just want to go to a 2-year school, right? Why don't I start that? Suffolk, Nassau, you know, these community schools are a great school. Why wouldn't I start there? And still others are just going to take a gap year, right? Ask the school, can I take a year off? Let me figure out what I want to do. Let me see what my financials are going to be like. Let me see what you're going to do. Are you going to be available to me in the way I wanted you to be available? Is it going to be the kind of school experience I wanted? If I was planning to go to Penn State and there's no football game in the fall, Is it still the same feel? Why would I go there if that's not the whole Big Ten rah-rah that I want? Maybe I can go someplace else at a lower cost and be just as happy, right? So I think there's a lot of pieces to it right now. So should your kid be considering a different school? Maybe is the answer. And I know that that's an awful answer, but it has to feel right to the student. Your child has to be comfortable with saying, I'm okay with going online potentially for the first time if that's the way it goes. I'm okay with starting later if that's the way it goes. And if they're not, then maybe a different choice is better for them, something more local. Right? So it's important to think about those pieces. And if anybody wants to talk more about that, if you have questions, we can get into that a little bit more after. Last two things just to talk real quick about AP and IB exams. So IBs have been canceled, right? So some of you, your students are taking those kind of exams. The International Baccalaureate comes out with 2 certificates at the end. Very few schools around here do it, but if your child is in a school where they have that, you will know that they are still going to award the diplomas for both the diploma and the career-related programs. It will be based on what your child has done in school, right? So their standard course of work. If your child is taking the AP exams, well, they've gone online, as you should all know by now. Big question is, will the colleges accept the credit? Well, nobody wants to be the first school to say no. So, but they are putting parameters around that. I just heard yesterday that Princeton has said, we will still accept the credit, but we're going to want you to take one of our placement exams as well, just to be sure. So there's going to be some different aspects of how all these things will start to roll out. Everything is still a work in progress. I think at the end of the day, what's important to know is that the schools are really trying hard to be available to you and your students. Look, college is a business. They want your kid to come. So they are going to try their best to do what's necessary to make that happen, right, in a way that provides the best academic and social and opportunities for your kid. So reaching out to the schools, if you're unsure, is a great thing to do because they're there to answer your questions and to try and make this work. So that's my piece, the non-financial side. I'm going to switch this over to Vicki. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to start putting them into the chat. And again, if you don't have a chat up on your right-hand side at the bottom, if you hover over the bottom, you will see an icon for chat. You can click on that, and that will bring up your chat box, and you can just input your questions. And now I'm going to swap over so Vicki can talk.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Eleanora. So Eleanora was talking a lot about, the impact that this pandemic is having. And I'm going to fill you a little about what the pandemic is doing on the financial side for both students and their families and the colleges. I mean, as I'm sure you all know, people have lost jobs, and that applies to both parents and the students. All the kids on campus, they've all lost their jobs as well as the family. So, you have that hit to both. Also, people have taken hits in their 529 plans, in their investment accounts, in their retirement accounts. So especially for the seniors now, if there have been those financial hits to your family, it's important to file appeals. The schools are fully aware that there have been lots of financial changes since FAFSA forms have been filed, and they're expecting all of those people to request additional aid. I'm going to talk a little bit more about FAFSA in a bit, but it's very important, especially if you haven't done the FAFSA form yet, to do it now. The other thing is there's the financial impact to the colleges due to this pandemic. So I'm sure you've heard a lot of the students, or all of the students at the colleges, were sent home. They're all doing distance learning. And because of that, the schools have had to refund all of the money they brought in for dorming, for meal plans and whatnot. So they had to refund those monies. Additionally, whatever conferences they were going to have on campus, whatever summer camps they were going to have, summer programs are now only distance learning. So they're not going to have the dorming, the revenue from dorming or meal plans. So they're losing all of that income. Additionally, the endowments, just like you and I have lost money in the stock market and whatnot, their endowments have likely gone down as well. So, while we're appealing for additional financial aid, at the same time, I'm being mindful that the colleges have also had a loss of income and revenue, and there may not be as much money to hand out. So just to bring up a point before, Eleanora was talking about the schools going test optional for the SATs and ACTs. They are test optional, not test blind in general. So if your student is an excellent student and applying to the right schools, sending those test scores in may be wonderful in terms of acquiring merit aid. So that's just an additional piece I wanted to bring up. So I started to mention FAFSA forms before, and it's so important, especially right now, to submit the FAFSA form. So the FAFSA form, for those that don't know, is the government's form for filling out financial aid. If somebody wants to fill out the financial aid form on their own, it's free to do so. There's no cost. Just have to be very careful, depending on whatever your specific circumstances are, that it's filled out accurately to maximize aid. Some families feel like, oh, we make too much money, we're not going to qualify, why should I fill it out? I'm going to give you a list of reasons why I advise all my clients that it's necessary to fill it out. One, depending on your own personal financial circumstances, it helps families to qualify for need-based aid. It helps families, the second thing is it helps families qualify for federal loans. And it doesn't matter if the family earns $1 million, it doesn't matter if the family earns $100. Everyone is entitled to federal loans for the student. So it's very important to fill out the FAFSA form. The next thing that the FAFSA form does, it allows the student to apply for work-study programs. A lot of people ask me what work-study is. It's a wonderful program in that the students have a job on campus. Maybe it's working in an office. When there's downtime in the office, what are the kids doing? They're doing their homework. They're understanding if there's an exam, they take off to study. They're very flexible with the students. And the students are getting paid. The money goes directly to the students. They get a check every other week. So it's not necessarily going towards tuition, but it's going to help them with their living expenses. What else does work study do? It gives them something to put on their resume. It gives them experience. It helps them with time management skills. So, a lot of people feel like, oh, no, my child is going to have too much to do freshman year. But really, having a job on campus, whether through work study or not, is great for the kids and helping them expand and grow. The last reason that it's important to fill out the financial aid forms, FAFSA specifically, is that while not 100% of the schools, a lot of the schools use it to award merit aid. So while it sounds contradictory, a lot of the schools want to see that you have a financial aid form on file, even to hand out the merit aid. So yes, I advise everyone to fill out FAFSA, whether your family thinks that you'll get aid or not. So since I know that we have families present that have different age students, I want to talk about some of the financial considerations, what you may be wondering or thinking about right now. For the families with high school seniors, and maybe you're still trying to make those college decisions, think about what's the cost of the college and can you pay that amount for all 4 years? I'm not sure where everyone is individually financially right now, whether in terms of jobs or job security and whatnot, and who knows when we're all going to be back to, quote unquote normal. So think about that and think about the 4 years. Don't just think about freshman year. Also, is it worth the cost, say for that, and I'm just making this up, for that fancy private institution to do distance learning? Is learning going to be different than what they may be doing distance learning with a different college or university? Also, scholarships that the child has been awarded. It's important to find out, to confirm. Are those awards for all 4 years? Is it just for for freshman year? I want people to be fully aware what they're getting into financially when committing to a school. Also, recently, if you've had a change in financial circumstances, now, and this doesn't have to be just from the pandemic. Say a family is recently separated or divorced. Say somebody loses a spouse. Say there are unfortunate, medical expenditures, job loss. If there are any changes, has an appeal been filed? It's important to do that, to reduce the cost of college and maximize your savings, especially when there are possibilities to do so. Lastly, we were talking before about the schools, and right now they're doing distance learning, and we don't know what's going to be going forward. What will be the policies for refunding money? Will they be refunding money? What are they going to be offering? How is it? You may just want to consider that and ask questions to help in making a decision. So now, for the families with high school juniors and younger that are present, what I always recommend to families is being strategic when you start to think about college and making a list for those colleges that you want to apply to. The people that get the most aid for college are those that plan ahead. There's a great quote from Ben Franklin. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So I like to work with that motto. Anyway, so as you're going into junior year, and even some sophomores I've worked with doing this, we'll start to think about the majors and programs that the students are interested in, the types of schools that they might be interested in, the location, whether they're big schools, small schools, private universities, small liberal arts colleges, if they want a city, if they want to be in a rural area, whatnot, and also consider the likelihood that the child is in receiving merit aid or need-based aid in the different schools. I always like to take money into the equation. So anyway, I'll work with families to find that list of schools to help to get those schools on your radar. Typically, everybody knows the top 30, 40 names that everybody applies to. My goal is to help expand that search, find additional schools to consider. Even if your child doesn't necessarily even want to go to that school, it's good to have comparisons and be exposed to other schools. Maybe there's, this great program out there that, you weren't aware of beforehand. Maybe they're looking for students for this program and more likely to offer merit aid. So it's great to consider options. One of the ways that Eleanora and I work together is that, I'll go through these college lists, usually based on the financial considerations, and then Eleanora can help refine that list even further for the families based on her additional knowledge of the schools. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. So this is ideally done with sophomores and juniors before they make that final list. Just a little more so, started talking about applying for financial aid. Just wanted to talk quickly about some misconceptions about financial aid. A lot of people think financial aid, it's free money. Well, not all the time. The colleges consider financial aid to be scholarships, grants, and loans. The key is to find the free money, though, which is scholarships and grants, and not the loans. So working with clients, and you want to minimize the loans and maximize the free money, and that's something that I always do when I look at the financial award letter and analyze who's offering what to whom. So when I'm working with families, and what I suggest to everybody is, especially for juniors and younger, is, creating that plan for financial aid, whether it's merit scholarships, whether it's need-based scholarship, whether it's, all the different financial considerations. So say there's a family who's recently separated, let's sit and make a plan to figure out how to position the child both for financial aid, for the economics that are needed for the family, to make it work. It's important to figure out what the possible budget is, if your family's willing to take out loans or not, and what the goals are of each individual family. That varies from one family to another. There is no right or wrong. Sometimes I'll use the example with clients, some people only want the designer pair of jeans, and that's what, they and their family need to have. And there are other people that are okay, that definitely like the jeans from Target that have a lower price, but yet essentially do the same exact thing. So, each family has separate values and separate goals. And, what I do is, help work with the families to establish those and figure out how best to maximize savings, working with the family to achieve their goals. So Eleanor?
All right. So thank you very much, Vicki. So there are a lot of considerations, right? There always have been as your students try to figure out where they want to go to school, what's important for them. What I really want to emphasize, and Vicki and I come on the same place on this, what's really important is finding the school where your kid will be happy and be most engaged, right? So for some kids, that's Harvard. For some kids, that's a community college. And for most of our kids, it's somewhere in the middle. And you need to be open to what those different opportunities are. You might be really surprised what is the best fit for your kid. I have two very different children. If you had told me that my older one would want to be at a Jesuit institution in a relatively small size, it's like 10,000 kids, I would have been kind of surprised by that if you had told me that 6 years ago, and that turned out to be the best place for him ever. If you had told me my younger one would have only wanted to look at big public institutions, and then she ended up at community college, and she's got grades and scores and activities and leadership that could have put her at a Tufts or a BU. But my kids ended up where they were supposed to be, really happy, doing what makes sense. In a way that makes sense financially for us as well, right? So there are a lot of components that go into this. And while everything is changing, some things always stay the same, right? So at the end of the day, who you are, what you want to do, and that place will find you, right? There is no one magic answer to all this. You walk on a college campus, for those of you who have done this, and you do a tour, those tour guides are cheerleaders. Right? You're never going to find a tour guide who goes, I hated this school. It was my bottom choice, but I picked it anyway because I had nothing else. Not going to happen. Those kids are going to tell you, I fell in love the moment I walked on campus, right? And what I try and tell my students is that it's not a marriage. This is 4 years of your life. You will find a place where you will learn what you need to learn in a way that you need to learn it, in a way that will get you to the place that you are meant to be. And to take a step back and just breathe. I have been on the phone doing video chats with all my seniors. I have 20 of them. And it's exhausting right now because they're all terrified, right? What's going to happen next year? What should I be doing? I don't know if I want to be far away. I really still want to go far away. Is that a bad choice? What should I really be thinking about? And at the end of the day, I keep telling them, listen to your gut, trust your instincts, talk to your parents, right? You want to make good financial decisions at this point, but you also want to make good decisions for you and where you feel best, because that's where you're going to be most successful. This is not going to be a traditional year for our high school kids that are continuing in high school or our seniors who will be starting college. But just because it's not traditional doesn't mean it's not going to be a great year. And I think we need to remember that. If we allow our kids the space to grow and encourage them to grow, I'm telling my students, don't say no because you're afraid. Say no because it's not the right fit. But fear is a real inhibitor, and we don't want to stay focused on that, right? We want to let these kids feel comfortable, feel secure. That's our job. That's my job. That's Vicki's job, right? Is to help these kids feel safe and secure. So that's my kind of piece to that. Just a few last moments. If you have any questions, you can post them in the chat. There were a couple questions that came up to me privately and that I will just address as a general piece to it. So somebody was asking, if your child is a junior, what should they be doing about letters of recommendation at this point? Well, the answer is, don't ask your teachers now. They're a little busy, right? Because most of them were not planning on being online teachers, so they're still getting used to that. And if your teachers are AP teachers, they are struggling to figure that out with their kids at this point too, and they're really just trying to keep them motivated to take these exams, to be perfectly honest, because a lot of these kids are saying, why should I take the exam? And the answer is, you should still take the exam because the colleges are going to figure out a way to take the credit one way or the other. Right? But once the APs are over, then yes, your kids should be reaching out to their teachers and saying, you know, I'm looking for letters of recommendation. Would you still be willing to do this? Right? In terms of summer activities, people are asking what kind of things out there that our kids should be looking for. Well, some places are still saying they're trying to be open. My guess is, if the economy is really to get rolling, we need to find a place for all these kids, because parents can't go to work if their kids are still home and not in some place safe and secure. Will camps open up again? I don't know. But, you know, maybe they will, maybe they won't. So you need to still stay on top of things like that you were still hoping for. Again, following a passion, following an interest, really letting that flow. A lot of colleges, Vicki mentioned, that they have summer programs, which are a part of their bread and butter in terms of providing money for their endowments. They are obviously not going to be in person, but they will be online. So what might have been a prohibitive amount of money, or the fact that your child didn't want to travel to a Wake Forest or do a program at NYU or wherever, now might be open to them. Right? So they may be taking more kids into these programs. It's still waiting to be seen what the pricing will be on that, but there may be more things available to them online. And now they've gotten a little bit of a sense of what it's like to take online classes. So doing a summer program online would be a great experience for them, and gives them some information about whether they like that kind of career, potentially studying those things. Also gives them a little bit of feel for what those colleges are like. So do they like that sense? You know, does Wake Forest feel right to them? Does Vanderbilt feel right? Maybe, maybe not, but it'll give you a little bit of a chance on that. So those are some of the questions I've been seeing come up. You all have Vicki and my emails. So when I sent you out the link for this, obviously came from me, and I copied Vicki. So you have a way to reach both of us. Vicki will be sending out a follow-up to this. We have created a timeline that basically pulls everything together from, you know, all of high school, what your child should be doing along the way, and how we can help you with that. We will also send you out the links to a lot of the information that we provided today, things such as the SAT, the APs, admitted students days, the campus tours. Check out our websites. Both of us blog and put a lot of good information out there. So if you're looking for information, we're a good place to start, because if we're putting it there, it means that it's really relevant and what's happening out in today's world. So feel free to do that. And lastly, we want you to know, Vicki and I work together. We also work separately. So if you're thinking to yourself right now, I have a lot of questions, not really sure where to go with this. Maybe you're a senior parent and you're wondering, should you be filing an appeal? Should you be reconsidering you know, the financial aid packages? Now's a great time to reach out to Vicki and see. If you're the parent of a junior and you're trying to decide, you know, what colleges should my kid be looking at? How do I even start to do that, right? Again, both Vicki and I work together on that. I work on that, trying to help you find the right schools to start looking for. College applications are going to be coming this summer. And if you're not sure, you know, guidance counselors are a great resource, but remember, they have a huge caseload, right? So if you're looking for some one-on-one assistance with the essays, because we know what they're looking for, that's my specialty, right? If you're looking for help with the applications, you know, we are here for you. And to help make that process easier, knowledge, you know, experience and direction plays a huge role in what we bring in terms of value. So we are here for you if you need us. I don't see any last questions that are coming up. So I want to thank you for spending your morning with us. Greatly appreciate that. Hope we've been able to provide you with some really useful information. Said we did record this, so we will be posting this on our websites. If you missed anything, you want to hear a little bit more, feel free to go access that. Reach out. If you have any questions, we can be of assistance. And as they say these days, stay safe and stay sane. Have a great day, folks.